guys. Welcome to Black Friday Live. This is our second last Friday Live of the year. And I'll just mention what we're going to be doing as well in our next one. But I am going to share my screen. We'll just talk about some new things that are in the pipes, and then we'll get on to what we want to cover today. So a few things coming up with that are new. We have a really good Black Friday Live promotion. We already have a bunch of promos that are pretty good, but we have a special one for you guys, only for this people who are on the chat today. Madalena will post that in the Zoom chat, a link to this promo. But basically, it's a really great deal on consulting hours. The regular Black Friday Live promo that we're having is 2 hours. You get an extra 1 hour of consulting. You can use that for anything from UX design to high-level architecture to refacing your apps, whatever you want to use our team for. And the special one for participants of today's Black Friday Live is 3 hours for the price of 10. So it's you get a bonus 3 hours. So that's a pretty good deal. You save about $500 roughly. And if Madeleine, if you could put the link to this page in the chat, that would be awesome. Thanks. If you have any questions about that, you can just ping Madeleine on Slack if you're on a Slack, or you can message her right here on Zoom. We have a few new things. We have a new proxy, and basically what the proxy is it's a more or less a container, if you will, that wraps around our network that forces all our outbound traffic from our data center to go through a fixed IP. And what that allows is it allows for people who have more higher level security on their intranets. And they do not want to expose any of one of our data centers or any one of our dynamic IPs. It has a fixed IP. There is a very nominal latency. It's on the order of a single-digit milliseconds, roughly. So it's not too significant. And it does add to add to the calls, but it's not really that much that you'd even notice it's there. So that's available on our Pro plans now. If you have any questions about that, you can contact myself or Eduardo. We have a document that looks at that. So if you have an IT department or one of the clients that says we have to know we're only going to perforate our firewall for very specific things, then they can whitelist our BetterForms servers. And BF latest push. One other thing too, our latest BF latest is going to get pushed to. It's going to get bumped by a few versions of software, and that's going to happen probably towards the end of the day. We usually try to keep those during non-peak times, so in case there is any adverse reactions, that we can prevent those or we can mitigate those really quickly. And that will be happening this afternoon. Now, this update actually brings quite a few features. It adds messaging, it adds some caching abilities, and a number of other things. So that'll be coming out later on today. Everything else is identical and compatible. Nothing will change in your apps at all. And I also wanted to talk quickly about the status of our PWA feature that we're working on. This is something that Eduardo's been working on quite a bit over the past 2 months. And we mentioned it last week, and a lot of people had asked questions about it. So I figured to dive into it in a little bit more detail. Basically, what a PWA is, it stands for Progressive Web App. The whole idea of web apps was originally, I don't think Steve Jobs actually thought of it, but he really wanted to promote those for the iPhone. And that's why we never had an app store. And then Apple realized, that they weren't making any money off of things. And the app store was a great idea for monetization. But the idea of a progressive web app is that you can save the website to your phone. Your phone will cache all of those assets. So it'll cache like the main code of the website, any data that the website is accessing. In our case, it's like hooks, and cache all of that data within the application itself. And then in the process of doing that, the app can, if the device supports certain things, the device has to support what's called service workers. Those are like a background thread that doesn't run in the main thread. The main processing engine, if you will, of the browser. You can think of it like running on client versus perform script on server, similar sort of idea. So it has to support that. But if it doesn't, it can fail backwards. And that's where the progressive part comes from. It has to support local storage, usually, but if it doesn't, your app just won't be able to have data that runs off of the line. There's a new ability in more modern browsers called indexed DB, which is like a local database. And then there's a number of databases. I'm going to demonstrate one in a few minutes that sit on top of IndexedDB. And if your browser doesn't support that, again, the app can still function. And let's see what else. I think those are the main parts. There's a few other parts of an app that are required for progressive web app as well. So I want to show you, and I'm going to send you guys a link, and I want to show you what that actually looks like. This isn't really a fancy domain, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this domain in a few minutes. So I'm in Chrome here, and I just hit this website. And this app is a BetterForms app, and it's running as a PWA. So what makes it a PWA is it has a few extra bits of information basically attached to the app. It has what's called a manifest, which is a document that specifies a whole bunch of things like, should this run in full screen? What does a splash screen look like when you launch the app or when you save it to the desktop? And a couple other little things, which we'll get into some details, but let's have a look at it. So right away, you notice it popped up and it prompted me, and this is fully controllable. What we've done is we've added some new functions, and we'll have a special Friday Live just to explore this stuff new, but I just want to tell you where we're going with this and why. In BetterForms style, we've tried to keep everything hyper flexible, right? So it doesn't have any opinion. So the app can just default prompt you with the browser prompt. You'll see that in a second. If I click install here, you can see the browser prompt. That's the default one. But a lot of people don't really like how this looks. So we've intercepted that call. And now we can, in this particular case, it's showing a card modal. So every time I hit refresh here, excuse me, you can see it prompts up. I can dismiss that, but you can put anything you want in here. And the idea is that you want to prompt the user to install this app. So if you're having we made a model fictitious field inspector app, and you want to tell your users to install it, you don't really want to do that right off the bat. This one's doing it just for an example, but usually you do that after they've done something of significant value. So they've maybe captured some information, so that's in their best interest to install this. So we'll install that in a few minutes, but I want to show you the rest of the app here as well. This is really a really simple app. It's just it's basically a typical progressive type, responsive type app. But one of the things that's really interesting as I navigate around, you'll notice there's zero lag. Right. And the reason for that is there's no hook that's actually running in this particular one to FileMaker. In fact, this particular example doesn't even connect to FileMaker directly. And I'll talk about that as well. So here's a very simple, you can go and edit some things, Moore Street. This is probably going to, we'll do this 1, 2, 3, main street, and we come back, the data is saved. If I have another app, we'll talk about the syncing in a second. If I have another app open or another window open, all of this information is live. So why would we want to have a PWA or a progressive web app? The main reason, or there's a couple reasons and how it affects your regular BetterForms apps. Once this version comes out into play, and it'll be fully compatible with existing BF apps, your app on second visit will load much quicker. My machine's really slow, and it's been getting slower. I noticed over the past few years, about 12 years old, this Mac that I'm on. So the refresh time is a little bit slower than a typical Mac. And I'll share this link in a second. Probably some people are already on it anyway. Let me just share this out right now. I'm going to pop this in here. And if you could just hold off on entering data for a second, just until I talk about that part. So basically the assets, that means the pages after the first visit, the pages are cached. All the form schema is cached locally in the browser. And in our case, our data is cached as well. So BetterForms has the ability to cache data in the app model here. And you can see in this particular case, I have quite a bit of data. There's a lot of data in this app model. And these are some pictures that are encoded as base 64. That's why it's large. That allows us effectively to reduce our dependency on the external database FileMaker and instead rely on an internal database. The app can detect when it goes online and offline. Right now, we're working on the response time of this, but if I open up the browser here and let's go to network and I take this offline and we give it a few seconds, and we'll improve this time with some different techniques. But after a while, the app will realize that it's offline, and you'll see it actually say that it's offline. And it can actually refresh it. They should be able to refresh it here. There, you can see it actually refreshed, even though it's offline right now. And and I can still visit all of these pages offline too. All right. So when you're building these kinds of progressive web apps, you have to take a little slightly different approach to how you're managing the things like the hooks. BetterForms you can do all of this stuff right out of the box right now. Okay, you can do almost all of it, but we've made it a lot easier to detect certain aspects like the online, offline, and the ability to install. We turn that into an action. Those are the main things. BetterForms has always been a PWA. So let's check this out. What I want you guys to do is open up that link, and if you have a phone here, I'll point your phone at this QR code, and you can install it, and you can see what it's going to look like. It's not going to steal any information or anything like that. Browsers can't do that. And I'll leave that up on the screen for a few seconds here. And try this on your phone. So you're going to basically load it on a phone. On an Android phone, it should prompt you to install. iOS does not auto prompt, right? That's a Apple thing. And then from there, you're going to navigate to jobs and add a job. Oh, actually, mine's offline here, so I guess I should go online. No throttling. And if you guys could let me know if you've added a job in there. Oh, we got one. Oh, look at that, Portugal. All right, I want you to look at my screen as you type, by the way. This is pretty cool. All right, somebody's just entering a date right here on this record, and they're modifying it, right? And somebody else do another one at the same time, because I haven't had a chance to really stress test this out too much. This particular app, normally we do a little bit of throttling and debouncing so that we're not like sending that much information, so it's not as chatty, but this app is real time between all of the devices. And if somebody goes offline while we make changes here, when you go online, you'll see all those changes appear again seamlessly. So it's pretty cool. You can see you'll be able to see your stuff, see these change. What do you guys think? Charlotte. Oh, somebody's got a picture here. Hope it's G-rated. So there's the picture. Oh wow, this is my present. Somebody got a Rolex. Their Black Friday purchase. Take some pictures as well. Oh, that's mine. You'll see the little picture icon show up. And if you save the app to your home page, you should end up with something that looks like that guy, right? I'm trying to get the coordination going here. Site inspector, something like that. When you launch that, you'll see a splash screen if it's not running already on your app. And likewise, you'll see, oh, there's an icon. That's pretty cool. Or an emoji. You'll see the pictures. I'm going to go to my Main Street one, take a few pictures. And this is using Uppy. The original version that we wrote of this app, the very original version was, we were using Uppy and we were using AWS S3. And I've disabled that right now. So it's not actually using S3 at the moment. We'll re-enable that. But when we wrote the app, Andrew and I wrote the code. We pair coded out the code that syncs this back into FileMaker. And it was kind of ugly. Like it was a lot of edge conditions that we really had to worry about. So one of the concepts when you're designing these kind of mobile apps is that you have this, what's called they call it offline first. It's kind of, you might have heard of mobile first, which is from a responsiveness aspect, but this one's called offline first. And the idea of offline first is pretty quick, huh? Somebody's testing that out. So, and of course, normally you would throttle that down, right? I'll show you how this works in a second. So the idea of offline first is that you start to think about your app and about the data not being connected to FileMaker or any other database, for example. This particular database is using, it's actually using Google Firebase. And if you want to learn a little bit more about that, we can jump into that as well. So. Anybody have any questions so far about this?
Hey, Charles, it doesn't prompt me to install at home screen.
Pardon me, say that again.
So when I refresh, I don't see the pop-up card to where it prompts you to install.
Okay, are you on an iPhone?
On an iPhone.
Yeah, Apple does not allow that.
Gotcha.
So that's back. But what you can do is your app in your code, you can check and you can say, is this app running locally? Is it installed or is it not installed? And then you can actually ask the user or prompt the user just the same. Right. So I'm going to show you, if you guys want to learn a little bit more about this, I'll show you a little bit more about how it works. It's actually surprisingly simple to get this real-time effect in BetterForms. There's literally only about 12 lines of code.
Charles?
Yes.
Same, I'm on one iPhone and I cannot install, but when I'm on a job, I create a new job with some pictures. I just have the option of deleting the job and I don't see my job there on the list. So is the job supposed to be there as soon as we click on new job?
It should, as soon as you start typing actually in the new job. Yeah, you should see it on the list.
Okay, I don't think I see my
Is your phone online?
Yeah. Yeah. I can refresh and in fact, I see exactly what you see.
Right.
But I don't see much.
Yeah. Well, we won't debug it right now, but there's probably a logical reason for it because it looks like everybody else. Is anybody else having problems? Right. So there's probably something unique to that specific one. What you can do as a test is edit one of these, go into 123 Main Street, for example, and edit that one and make a change, and then it'll give you an idea. But so this is really incredibly easy to build, right? I want to show you why. This is another reason why we're kind of going in this really. So there you go. You can just see it entering here. Why we're moving in that direction. First of all, the assets are stored locally on your computer. Most BetterForms apps are not one-off users, the majority of them. Most of them are coming back, the users, and it's usually some type of business to business on average. And the user is not necessarily a direct employee, but there's somebody who does business with the company. So it's like a client. It may be an ancillary employee or something along those lines. And somebody's trying to see if they can put HTML in there. That's what happens when you expose something to a bunch of developers, right? They try to see what they can get away with. So what they can do. Because of that, there's a high probability that the user is returning. So rather than, we are focusing on initial load time. In this latest build, we've reduced that from about 3.5, 4 seconds down to about 1.5 to 2 seconds, depending on the machine that you're on. So we significantly reduce that by pushing a lot of assets to be loaded down later on, optimizing. But more importantly, with this PWA is the next time I refresh, it's much, much quicker. And you can compare this to a regular BetterForms app, even the editor, and see the difference in load time. The editor is a little bit slower because we have a lot of extra stuff going on in there in that particular app. But in a light BetterForms app, this still loads much quicker. So that's one of the big things. It's a lot more robust in the sense of being sensitive to asset and library availability, right? It'll use the local library. So if you added any third-party libraries, we've added provision in there. So automatically it will, if I've gone and used some new widget that's not, that I've never used before, it's not built into BetterForms, the PWA feature will automatically cache the access to that widget as long as you've accessed it at least once within your app as well. So I want to take a couple minutes. You guys want to see how this works a little bit more, or you want us to jump on to the next thing? What do you think? Thoughts? Don't all speak at once.
Jump.
Sorry, pardon me?
Jump to the next thing.
Jump. Okay, cool. All right. So that's our PWA feature. It's coming out. This particular one uses Firebase, and that syncs back to FileMaker so that it can fully work autonomously. I think that's pretty cool. You'll start to see the real benefits once we've released that fully. All right. Something we've done in the past is a technique corner. This week's technique, or we're adding a new segment. We're going to call it before and after. And what we're going to do basically is look at some type of application, whether it's in code or whether it's in UX. And we're going to look at what that is beforehand. And then we'll look at maybe making some tweaks and some changes to it, and why we've done that, either for optimization or whether it's from UX. And this week, I'm going to pass this over to Pearson, who has an example, and he'll explain from there.
Thanks, Charles. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Like Charles said, we're gonna do this kind of new segment before and after. This week we'll be focusing on UX, and I'd like to thank Jason Wood for allowing me to use one of his pages or as an example of how we can make some improvements. So I'm going to be, I won't be too critical. Like this isn't this isn't like a roast battle or a roast session or something. But I've already talked to him. I'm going to show what we started with, the improvements that he's made on his own, and then how I would take it to the next level. So welcome to the before and after UX Corner segment featuring Plan 360. So what I want to show is the before and the after. This is just an example of a table page. There's been a lot of stuff added to it that you'll see in his most recent update. But essentially what I'm trying to do is just make this page that contains a table easier to read, give more context as to where you are in the app, give more context as to what project you're working on that this table is referring to. So let's get into it. Let's check out some of the notes I had for the before picture. So first thing I noticed was that this page, and again, this was already early in development. This was not Jason's final product, but the first thing I noticed was that there's no navigation. So he sent me a link, and the link brought me directly to this page, but there was no way of actually getting back to the main page, which I think was a dashboard of some kind. So the first thing I noticed was, yeah, the lack of navigation, the lack of knowing where you are within the app. So a question that you could, and I want to set this up as my notes, and then questions you can ask yourself to to make sure that you think about these things in the right way. So when you're working on something, you can ask yourself, how did we get here and how did we get back? So how did we get here? This is a page with a table, but how did we get here? This is just from a single link. Okay, we got here through the link, but how do we get back to a previous page, or how do we get back to the main page, the home screen? So those are questions that you should be asking yourself. The second one was naming conventions in your headers. The header should be a description for what is below or what is seen on the page. How does this header contextualize what's below? So when you call this a client checklist, with the lack of context in the rest of the page, client checklist doesn't really fit what we see here, because if you're the user and you are the client, it's a little funny to refer to yourself as the client. Checklist would indicate to me, when I first looked at this, checklist means like something I can check off and remove. I understand that it's a status driven table where you're sending things and waiting to receive stuff back, and you're kind of checking those off of your mental checklist maybe, but here isn't really a checklist. So I would think of how these headers contextualize what's below, maybe do a little brainstorming on what you want to use as your naming conventions. Next is table sorting. This is a common issue that I've seen in a few different apps where it's good to be able to sort through tables, obviously, alphabetically, A to Z, whatever. But you want to make sure that the icons that you're interacting with are visibly connected to the column that you're sorting. So we have two sorted columns, group and name, but the group sorting icon is at the very right, and it looks like it might be connected to name, like it might be on the left of the name. But thankfully we have two of these, so we can infer, after looking at it for a bit, we can infer that, oh, this naming column is associated with this icon, and this icon is associated with this group column. But I think just a simple way of avoiding that is making sure that they're either or making sure that they're next to the word. Next is leaving icons open for interpretation. So here we have these various different statuses, color coded and using different icons to indicate what those statuses mean. It's safe to assume that you as the developer can rationalize what each of these means. An hourglass probably means there's a waiting period. The color orange also kind of means like is between green and red. Kind of, you think of it like this, the traffic lights, like green means go, means good, red means stop, means bad, yellow means you're kind of in the middle, or orange or amber or whatever you want to call it. But I think that you can ask yourself, do these icons on their own provide enough information? And you don't want to leave a lot of stuff for interpretation, because depending on what it is, it might not be clear. These are kind of abstract icons on their own, where they don't automatically have a specific connotation to them when you look at it from a UI perspective. There's some icons like the menu icon, where I call it the hamburger. It's just the 3 lines, the 3 bars. At this point with technological literacy, most people understand that that just means menu. You don't need additional text for that, because it's kind of built into our understanding. But stuff like this, the 3 dots here, the waiting icon here, the triangle alert icon here, doesn't automatically mean a specific thing. It's kind of open for interpretation. So for those reasons, I would avoid these when I can, if I think that words would be more effective. Number 5 here, your calls to action. This is a button to upload documents, but I think what you can ask yourself is the purpose of this call to action clear? When I first saw this, took me only a second to realize it, but I first read it and I thought it was uploading documents with the ... meaning that it was loading. So this call to action wasn't immediately clear to me that it was asking me to do something. I thought it might have been like a waiting period or something that I'm waiting for, as opposed to something that I have to do myself. So I would just make sure that your call to actions are clear, and you want to make sure the user knows exactly what they're for and what they're expected to do. Last point for this one is formatting. Are the rows and columns visually balanced? So in something like this, where you have 2 lines on in one column, you have it's separated into 2 lines. The next column should be a line to the center, a line to the middle, so that it's not raised to the top and it leaves a bunch of open space on the bottom. Just feels a little clunky. It's not like a make or break for a table, but just in terms of styling, I think it is an important point to note. You can see that the upload documents is centered nicely, but the other ones are all kind of raised to the top, leaving a little bit of negative space below. So that's the last point I have for how it started. Next is how it's going. So these are the changes that Jason made without me. Well, we met, but I think he already made these changes before we even talked about it. So these were all just changes that he made on his own, and I really liked some of them. And there's a couple more notes that I have that I'll get into. So what I liked was adding the additional context. Are there details that I can add to provide useful contextual information? So here, this page is actually referring to a specific project. So this project has a file number and a name. It's got a location, and here we have who's signed in or who's using it, which is Jason or the user themselves. So I think that including that information is really good. It helps provide context for what you're looking at, helps you remember where you are within the app. But I think the location and the styling of this could use some work, so I'll get into that on the next slide. But I really did like having adding the additional context. I think that's useful. The second one is limiting redundancy. So what you can see here, and I'll go back and forth, but Jason has reduced the number of columns because not all of them were necessary. So we have group, the name, the date submitted, and the status here. The date submitted and the status were combined because from what I could tell, it looks like the status is relevant to the date that has been submitted. So something like when a document wasn't submitted and you have the status of something is required, there is no date submitted. So here, this column was just empty. So I liked how you're combining these columns when appropriate, because it allows you to save space horizontally. So now you have more room. You can add this new column called comments, and comments based on the context of what a comment is, it will take up more space. So having that availability is really good if you're able to open it up by combining some of these repetitive data points. The next one, descriptive visuals. So yeah, just improving on the status icons. He changed them to little badges or pills. And so this is great because you're still giving the visual description with the color. You're still color coding things, but now the icon is removed and it's not open or not as open for interpretation anymore. Now you know exactly what you're looking at. The blue means in review because clearly stated. The orange means that there's something missing, something's required. The red one means non-conforming. All that kind of stuff is very, very easy to understand. There's no question. Number 4 is the hidden pages. So here, this was Jason's way of managing that navigation issue that I brought up in the previous page, where there's no way to navigate to and from this page. So he put them in this this menu icon here. Again, like I said, the menu icon doesn't need the word menu next to it because this icon universally means there's something in here. Come check it out. It's like there's a menu. The problem is, I think that hiding some pages, while in certain cases are useful, if it's your main navigation, I think it should always be present because unless you're on mobile and you need that real estate, here we have a lot of room in the top bar here. So I would rather show these all the time rather than hide them in a menu. So what you can ask yourself is, will hiding these options create a positive experience? Kind of asking yourself, why am I hiding these? Is there a reason why I shouldn't have these visible all the time? Next is proximity. So this has got to do with this menu again, in that you're changing your project or the session that you're in from this menu. But what I noticed was that this action of changing your project is affecting what you see here. So they are kind of close together. They are like, you know, distance-wise kind of close. But opening up this menu and changing your session from this this pop-out, it does feel like a little bit of a different workflow than what you might expect to change here. So asking yourself, will this action produce its result in a relatively common region? Here, technically, I would say it's a relatively common region, but this being separated by its own pop-out menu being hidden in here, it doesn't exactly feel super intuitive for this to be the way to change this, if that makes sense. You want those two things to be linked together, and hopefully that makes it easier for the user to understand what they should be doing. So if you have your project information here, you probably would expect to change that project from somewhere within this element. Last thing is searchability. So again, I really liked how Jason combined some of these fields together. So on the previous page, you had your group and your name here. In group, you have a lot of the same things. After talking with Jason, he said that there could be up to like 9 different categories, building, construction plans, and development only being 2 of them. So just seeing this written 10 times in a row, it is a little repetitive. So the and since it's all the same thing, it's not as important as these names, which are different. So here you have the building construction plans kind of in smaller text, and the name of that piece or that item called plans on existing building. That is the more important text, because that is the one that is changing between each row. Now the problem is, can this data be easily searched? So it is nice that you're combining these 2 rows or these 2 columns, but now it's a little bit harder to search. So in the previous page, you were able to sort them. So you could say, you know, if you're grouping them all together, like if you're sorting these, if you had 9 categories, all of those categories would be stuck together. So all the building construction plans are in one section, the development ones are in another section. But here, we've removed the ability to sort, because if you are to sort A to Z, what is it that you're sorting? Are you sorting the name of the item, or is it the category of the item? Most likely, the name being the item being the most prominent text. That's what I would assume is being sorted if you were to sort this column. So combining them in this case did create a couple issues in terms of like being able to find what you're looking for. So I'll go to the next page and show you what I've made with the differences that I made to bring it to another level. So here we have showing the options. Pages and language options are visible at a glance. So actually, that's something I forgot to mention. Here, a little FR icon. To me, I actually think that this makes sense. Like, I understand FR means French, typically at the top right in like a header bar. That might be where you change language. So I could interpret myself, clicking this would probably change the page to French. But to somebody else, they might not understand, or they just might not know how many languages you're going to be able to cycle through. So here I just turned it, just showing the options. You're only switching on between English and French. So you have the FR and the EN. The EN being the one highlighted right now means that it's the selected one. And you're showing 2 options, meaning like you only have 2 language options, but here they are. You can switch between them. This is the one that's active right now. If you did have like a whole bunch of different languages that you want to select from, this probably wouldn't be the method that you'd want to use. But considering it's just 2 languages, it's good to show both options and show which one is active. Next is the the actual navigation. So now I'm showing the options for the navigation. You have 3 pages, and you see the page that you're on. You're on the checklist page. And since we call this the checklist page, and you see what page you're on from this header, now I can move. Now I have room to remove this title and replace it with some of the information that is present here. So I changed the header to be the project description. So you have, this is the project name, this is the project address, and this little chevron here indicates that this is where you change that project. This is where you switch sessions. So if you were to click this, I made this little drop-down modal where you can select between your different permits for your different projects, or you can add a new one to, very similar to how we use BetterForms and changing the companies or organizations that you're in, switching them up just from a little menu here. Now, yeah, that's has to do with the proximity of keeping that action close to the affected region. And thirdly is the searchability. I've changed this table a little bit so that these items are grouped together. So we have these grouped rows almost. You have your kind of a heading within that table saying everything below this is building construction plans. So you have 1, 2, 3 building construction plans. Now everything below here is development. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 development items. And again, it's hard to search through these, or it's hard to sort through these with the A to Z sorting system. So instead, since these are category based, I made this little filter button where you can filter through the categories. So you have the option to turn on and turn off these different categories to show more or show less. So if you are only looking for your building construction plans, you just deselect everything else, and only this one is going to show up. And to me, I think that's a way that is one way of adding searchability to this table. A couple other things that have changed, just small stuff. Moving the submitted date from below the badge to below this item here. The only reason why I moved that was, personally, I thought stylistically it looked a little funny to have this on one line and this second column on 2 lines. You know, it's not a make or break change, but it's something that I thought was more visually appealing. I changed the upload button from upload document to upload just as a single button. And I think buttons are a more clear call to action. It's like a little square. It looks like a button. You want to click it instead of just text where, you know, someone will probably click it, but it doesn't call to them as much as this might. And I think those are all the changes I made. I made another change just to the footer, just to add a little bit more life to this page. Would be to repeat the logo at the bottom here, a little bit more branding and separating it to 3 lines. This is just like a footer that I've seen before. You have your logo, a little slogan here, and then your copyright at the very bottom there. And I think that just looks a little, looks nicer. Not a make or break, but it's just these small things that once you keep on adding small pieces, then you build something that becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And yeah, so that's the before, middle, and after. And yeah, again, I'd like to thank Jason again for letting me break down his page, and hopefully I've brought some points to your attention that you might not have thought of before.
Yes, thank you. That's amazing. There's lots of really amazing things there. I wrote down a few notes while you were talking, though, that I'll bring up. The language icon and the footer. The reason I designed those the way they are is so that it's consistent with the client's website, like their public website. So I probably wouldn't change those, but I do like what you did better. Anyway,
Well, you know, that's a good point though, is you want consistency. So in that sense, like additional context of what you're building here, that makes sense to keep it similar, keep it kind of within the same styling brand family as what you're working with. So that makes a lot of sense. But maybe these are some points you could bring up to them.
Yeah, no, I will show them this for sure.
Yeah, and I'll share this presentation as well with you, Jason, and anybody else that would like to look through this themselves. I can share this so that you guys can have it in your back pocket as well.
Yeah, this is great. There's tons of little tips here. Makes me want to redesign a bunch of things.
The submitted date, I agree that it looks better, but I don't feel like I like it being that disconnected from the status, which it's directly relevant to.
Mhm.
But it's not that important to show. I wonder if maybe it would make sense as a tooltip on the status or something like that.
Yeah, these things all depend on the use case of what you're building. So maybe the submitted date is kind of like a tertiary piece of information that no one's really looking at first glance, but maybe if they really want to get into the nitty gritty, they can hover over the status bar here and it'll say like when it was submitted. But yeah,
like one thing that I
totally.
considered doing is making it so that if you click on a row, it adds sort of an area under the row for additional information. Like that might show the date submitted, but it might also show a list of files like a list of documents that have been uploaded in the past.
Mhm.
The information like that may be useful.
Yeah, I think that's a
spent
good
2
thing
days on this.
that's a good thing to think about. And I'll share my screen showing something else. And this is another link that I can share with you guys. This I actually started looking at more recently. This web page is like the guide to table design or data table design. So what you mentioned was opening up a row to display more information. And I think there is an example of that somewhere in here. And if I can't find it, then I'll send a link to you guys and maybe you'll be able to find it. But here it is. Yeah, exactly. Expandable rows. So it shows a lot of different ways of achieving certain interactions with tables. I think this is just a really great source to have. Specific to data tables, because I think that is one of those elements in UX UI design that is looked over a lot, because Excel sheets are so simple and so recognizable that we design a lot of tables like Excel sheets, but we don't have to, because we have this ability to create interactions and design it and style it in different ways. So they're more effective than Excel sheets in the sense of finding information at a glance instead of looking through it like a database.
I guess as you learn more, I mean, you haven't had a ton of interaction with what this app does either, in fairness. You just sort of looked at what you could observe. But as the more you learn about what a client is really doing, like Jason, you know exactly what this app is supposed to do and what the goals are and the objectives. That would make a big difference in some of the design decisions, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I hope I do. I mean, I've never applied for a building permit myself, but this is my first draft, and it's based on my understanding of the workflows. I haven't even shown it to the client yet. That'll happen next week. So things could change for sure.
This what is this site exactly? It looks like it's a lot of UX related things, or it looks really interesting. I've never seen this one before.
Yeah, I actually haven't gone through the full site. I only have looked through this one article, but pencil and paper, we can take a look around now. Let's see what their articles and contents. So yeah, I think this is just another one of those tech blogs, more focused on UX and UI, but it looks like they have a lot of articles about UX and probably a lot of helpful tips. Yeah, so this looks like a really good resource. I'll probably bookmark it.
In the chat, we have notes from any links that we looked at that anybody submitted and so on. We keep those in our show notes, which are underneath the Notion doc. And you can find it from within our app and from our homepage, our website under Awesome BetterForms. And there's a list of all of the Friday lives, plus links to all the recordings and things as well.
Yeah. So, does anybody else have any questions about what I presented, or any other questions about UX that you'd like some
Could you go back to
advice on?
Could you go back to your final draft?
Sure.
Or
So I can actually here's the actual Figma if we want to see it in a little higher resolution.
So side navigation, top navigation, is there any like pros, cons? Like this seems like it makes sense. There's 3 chunks at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And years ago, websites were all sidebar navigation. If anybody remembers from the early, if you built any web apps or websites in the 90s, early 90s, they were all sidebar things, kind of very wiki-like. And then suddenly they turned into and apps were always top navigation, like Mac still is. And then somehow they all switched to all the apps are really, for the most part, side navigation, and websites, like non-app sites, tend to be more top navigation. Is it just a style thing, or is there a logical reason one would be more than the other?
The logic that I think of when I'm deciding between top and side is how much am I actually putting into each of these things. So for this case, it's only 3 pages, and dashboard is barely a page on its own. You could just go to dashboard by clicking on the logo here. So in that sense, there's no reason to reduce that horizontal space by making a navigation panel on the side. Horizontal space is a lot scarcer than vertical space, because vertically you just scroll forever and ever. You have as much space as you want. So putting it up at the top here, you're not removing space for anything else that might be important, but putting it on the side, you're making the table a little smaller. If you had more columns here, then those get squished, and the comments, that column gets a little smaller, and it creates more lines because the comments are so long. That's the thought process that I have when deciding between the two.
What about icons? You mentioned about icons, and apps used to have like icons everywhere. Like if you look at an old version of Excel, there was like 3 rows of icons upon, and it's like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The trend is to move away from them into a bit of a text and make like a text icon kind of thing, or are there times that icons are justified?
Yeah. There are definitely times that icons are justified, and that's like if you have, like you're saying, in a tool setting where maybe if it's Photoshop or Excel or Word, there's a ton of icons at the top because there's so many tools that it would be impossible to write each of their names in line. So that's why you hover over them and it gives you the name of that tool. But in something like this, I think it was on the this original page, there's no reason to rely on just an icon, especially if it's an informative icon rather than an icon representing a tool. Because this is information that you're hiding now. You're hiding the information of what does this icon mean. And so, and again, these are icons that aren't necessarily, they don't inherently mean something specific. These are kind of, like the alert icon, even in this context, I'm not sure what this means. Alert to me means like there's a bug or there's something broken. And so in that sense, me just explaining it now, like I'm not exactly sure what this is supposed to mean. So you want to remove any room for misinterpretation and just make sure that in certain contexts, you just say explicitly what the thing is instead of relying on an icon to hopefully relay that message. But again, like I also said, this icon, this menu icon, that's universally known as a menu. Or there's other icons like the upload button or like a cloud upload button. Those are pretty common with like the little cloud with the up arrow. Those are becoming more universally known. There's other symbols that we see in everyday life that mean that are inherently connected to a word. Like you got the boy and girl symbols on bathrooms. They don't have to say men and women. They just have this icon. You know what it means. So you can kind of think of it in that way. Does this icon mean something on its own, or does it have multiple meanings? And we just have to hope that the user knows the meaning that I'm trying to put forward.
I actually wanted to do you want to put the new one back on? I actually wanted to do breakdown by subheading like that, but I don't think you can do that with the view table 2.
Not nicely.
I'm just
no.
wondering if Charles has any thoughts about how do I start if I want to build something like that?
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
the other thing would be the disclosure row or whatever it's called, if I wanted to build that.
Yeah. So what you can do to build this is we would probably, you have to look and say, do I want to use an opinionated data table, or do I just want to code this row by hand? And it's actually surprisingly easy to code this by hand. But you do, when you code something by hand, you lose a couple things. You lose the search. So you have to basically rebuild your search. That's not too hard to do. We do that with a number of pages. And the sorting is a little trickier. That one's a little bit more of a pain. So you say, well, do I really need the sorting? Like, how many items are going to be, like, I would sort of tend to push back to the designer a little bit, in the sake of being a practical build, and saying, or come back to you and we'd say, well, how many items are practically going to be in a worst case scenario under the building construction plans? And you only say, well, it's going to be 3 to 5. Like, you probably don't need to sort those if they're already on some type of a sort to begin with. And if you don't need to dynamically change the sort, which most people, the truth is most people don't, I think, in my opinion. I know in our editor, you sort mostly by date. And that's either the newest, either show me the newest stuff or you show me it alphabetically. Nobody ever wants to sort by, like, other things. So if that's the case, then it's pretty easy to code this by hand, and you can probably do it in about 15 minutes. You already have, with the badges and things like that. We just added a template, an example page. I'll show you with a number of these badges that I've designed. You can just copy and paste them right in, change the code. And yeah, it's pretty simple. It also gives you it makes it very easy. You can, with the table, it's very easy to do responsive design. So for on a mobile device, how will this look? And this will probably all be stacked tall. But it's pretty easy to do as well. So code it by hand. Does anybody have any other questions?
Maybe I have one more actually. The next feature I wanted to add was, so this page actually loads from a custom link with a token in it. So the user is not required to create a username and password. Some of these users will just use the website once and they'll never use it again. So we don't want to have a large barrier there. But many users are contractors or people who manage many projects. And so we want to put a call to action somewhere to create an account or something like that. And just wondering if Pearson has any ideas about where I would put that.
Yeah, I would say for creating an account, I would probably put that at the top right here. This design is already like imagining that there was an account already. Like, this is my account. Click this button here, and you go to your account page and you log out. But if you're trying to have someone sign up, that's commonly put in the top right because that's where the account would be if someone had one. So usually top right.
The thing here, though, is that whether the person has an account or not, they still are authenticated as themselves. So it will still show their name there, even if they don't have an account.
Oh, okay.
The account adds the ability to manage multiple projects and switch between them without having to go find an email link.
Could you put, when they go to manage these multiple projects, at that time prompt them to
okay, so when they go to switch project,
create account, and then maybe what's in it for them, create account to support multiple things. Like, for example, I think it's the electrical or the gas company. When you go to somewhere on the page, it says add another account, and then you can create, you can add these other meters onto the same login portal.
Yeah, I would even consider making an obstructive modal of some kind where, like you said, like once they decide to add a new project or switch sessions, maybe that's when you have a modal that comes up and says, kind of like as an advertisement saying like, hey, would you like to do this easier? Like, check out, you can sign up for this thing and you get all these new features, and this is why it's useful and this is why you should do it. And making it obstructive, like it interrupts their workflow. Sometimes that's annoying, like if it's like a newsletter or something, but sometimes it's useful. If you really do think that this is the better way of operating this this app, is if you have an account, you can do that. Maybe you have like a little a toaster bar at the top so that it doesn't prevent them from continuing to use the site, but it's this sticky note that's always permanent, that they always see.
I'm thinking the
always
user
reminding
doesn't
them.
need to know about it until they click that downward chevron. I think that is the trigger. That if you click that and you don't have an account, it says create an account to manage multiple projects.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks again for letting me delve into this this page a little more. And I think if anybody else would like to be the subject of our next before and after, then you can reach out to us. We'll maybe do that in our next Friday Live. This was a fun first time segment experiment. So thanks, guys.
That was awesome. Awesome. And Chris just came in just in time to miss that. So poor guy.
Sorry.
But you missed a great segment there. It was really, really cool.
Oh, definitely go back and watch it.
I just want to just show a new example page that we just added that kind of touches into that. And just share my screen here. All right, and it's a tags, I think. Or maybe not tags. Oops, sorry, I'm not on examples. The Zoom is always in the way here. There we go. Tags and badges. Here it is here. This page here, and let's preview that. Let me clean up some of my other mess here. All right, this page is a demo page that we just added, and I'm going to make these a bit bigger so they won't be actual size, but you can see them easier. And these are actually a bunch of suggested tags and or badges and avatars from Tailwind UI. And we use these as examples because they're really, really clean. One of the things they've done here is they've, if you are making your own badges, and maybe Pearson can chime in on this as well, but they tend to use the foreground color. The text color is just a darker version of the background color. And that tends to make the edges where the aliasing and where it matches and blends and however the browser renders that, it tends to make them a lot more readable. They've also, and you can take this apart yourself, but they've also adjusted the leading, the space in between the letters as well, so that when it gets to be a really small size, if I go back to 100% here, this is still quite readable. And if you actually compare the same badge without the leading, without the adjusting of the font size, and turn it into black, it's surprisingly a lot muddier. And it's those really, really subtle touches that tend to make things just pop a lot. The accessibility aspect is important as well. The contrast between the foreground and the background color, we don't really talk about it, but with web apps, it's really, especially stuff that's facing the public, like Jason's use case for building permit. Accessibility is an important thing, and it may even be a requirement. Some of these can, you can dismiss these as well. We have some examples where we created different types of sorts and filters, and as you add the filters into your app, you can clear those filters away as well. An example of these types of icons you actually can see in the editor is one right here. This one's using just some initials, but it's the same sort of idea when you have multiple people the same kind of thing can happen. So that's something that's a new example that we've just added. If you're interested in more examples like that, let us know, and the team, we can whip those together really, really easy for you. We have, I don't know, 150 or so pages there, but it's easy to add some more. All right, I'm going to jump to Andrew. And Andrew, last week, Hassan had mentioned some stuff on some slots and building some headers. And Andrew's currently working on some apps where instead of using a slot at the top, he's using a slot at the side. So I'm going to switch screens there.
Sure. Thanks, Charles. Hey guys, I've been dealing with the code for the past week, so hope you can bear with me. So the idea is I had a use case where I needed to create a very customized side navigation bar with things like a table in it and the ability to conditionally show different kinds of navigation bars in the same app. And Charles showed me a really cool technique that I'll be sharing with the rest of you. It looks something like this, and I'll share my screen. So you have this side navigation bar, which you can open and close, such as that. This is built using a slot as a form header. And if you see, if I go over to my app model, and I have to sign in here. And change the sidebar property from properties to something like users. A different sidebar will show up. I have it showcasing as a title there, but this is an entirely different sidebar. So we're going to be building this from scratch.
Cool.
Oops, that broke something, but we'll go back to properties. So let me just wipe out some of the data here, and we're going to start from the very beginning, which is creating a form header and also setting up your page. So on your page, well, let's start with the header first. We'll go over to the styling tab and go over to slots. Let's delete this form header here and refresh. So we'll create a, oh, well, that didn't delete.
Oh, you didn't save.
Oh, I didn't save. Good point. So we'll delete. And we're going to be creating a new slot, and the slot position will be in the form header position. And it'll be some kind of div with the classes of, let's go with BG neutral, 600. We'll set the, we'll give it a height of, let's say 16, just to show the original header. And then we'll give it some padding. So we'll save that. And we should see, oh, and I gotta remove my flex. So this is your original form header. And if you inspect the page here, you can kind of see the structure of the page itself. The blue section of the page is your page element. And you can see how the header is part of the page element. And by default, elements on a page are displayed in a block form. So things are put on top of each other. But you can take advantage of this by giving the page flex. And by flexing, now elements are being showed side by side to each other. So by taking advantage of this fact, we can turn a header into a sidebar. And all you have to do is essentially just give your page, style classes page, the classes flex, and then give your body flex 1. So I'll do that here. For example, give your page flex and give your body flex 1. Flex 1 just means take up the rest of the space in the flex box. And you can now see that the page is showing side by side. So all we have to do now is style up our sidebar, and we can see. So we'll give it the classes each screen. We'll set a width. Let's give it something like 50 pixels. So now we have a sort of a sidebar structure. And now this is totally customizable in HTML. So let's try giving it like a title, for example. So we'll have a little header, call it properties. make that some white text. And we can take a look at that change. And there you go. So it's pretty simple to get started. And because it's HTML or a slide, this is totally customizable. So you can have things like conditional checks. So let's say if something in your app model, like app.sidebar equals some variable such as users. Or this would be properties, actually. And let's say you had another one. So this one would be users. And this one should say users. You can see that it totally app.env.sidebar, right?
Yeah.
It's in my environment settings. So now we have properties, and then if I go over to my app model and change that to users, we have our, I must have missed something here. Let's go back over to my styling tab. Give it a refresh. App.sidebar equals env.
Sidebar. That looks okay. What is the actual app model data?
App model users and sidebar users, huh?
Oh, top level div in slots.
Oh, right. So
this is a very small edge case thing. Basically, when you're using slots, there has to be just one element on the outside. It's a technical reason, the way the browser works.
And users. Cool. So we have our users, we have our sidebar. I want to showcase one more thing, which is the toggling of the sidebar. And this can be done using some kind of model, some kind of Boolean in your model I call it nav visible. And we can use this to kind of toggle the navbar open and close. And this is most easily done using some kind of transition. For example, let's say you had a conditional class, and that was dependent on something in your app model, such as app.navVisible. If that was true, then you can give your sidebar some width. So let's say with 350. If that was false, then we'll give it a width of, let's say, 8. And we need something to toggle that. So let's create a little icon here. Will be some bars, file bars, and get that text white. And then that icon will have a action that essentially just toggles the Boolean true or false. So app.navVisible is going to be the inverse of app.navVisible. Oh, equals the opposite. There we go. And I'm on the users one. Let's switch that over back to properties. And I do refresh. This will be properties. So now we can toggle the sidebar. Obviously, it'll take some styling, but you just gotta put it on the right here, and it should work as usual. So I did build this sidebar out already. I'll paste that in, and I'll show you what that looks like. Notice here how we have the transition up here. The transition all essentially what that does. Oh, need to refresh again.
It's because you're jumping from tabs to tabs. That's why you're on the same one. Okay.
Notice how I have a transition on the class. What transition all does is when the div essentially translates or changes sizes or etc. Transition all will make that smooth. It'll handle the duration, will handle the animation, and that is a Tailwind class. So if you go over to Tailwind and search in transition, you can find a whole bunch of different transitions to look at, and Tailwind is quite powerful. So definitely take advantage of this. But if you refresh, you can see how we have our little side navbar. This was a use case that I needed for a certain project, and I thought it'd be interesting to share, and hopefully it'll be useful for some of your apps in the future. And this can be, it doesn't have to just be a sidebar, but you can use it for other purposes.
That's really cool. Looks really nice, really sharp. Should note, because it's data that's controlling the tab that he's, or the variant of the site with the contents of that nav bar. Right now he's got properties and head users. That can be controlled from FileMaker, right? So all you have to do is set a variable into $BF app and that can switch that sidebar to anything that you want. Maybe you have some contextual data that's in there. When a user clicks something, the sidebar changes or something like that.
All right, Charles.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions about that? How that works? All right. Well, I'm just looking at our time, and I think what we'll do is we'll stop on the pause on the techniques, and I wanted to kind of hopefully generate a little bit more of a roundtable sort of chat about the kinds of things that you're building. And next week on next month on our Friday Live, we're going to be having a best of 2023. It's going to be a show and tell where our team will showcase some of the items that we've built, and if you guys want to bring some of the things that you've built as well, and we can talk about that. And that kind of very inspiring. We did that last year. It was really, really popular. So hopefully we can do that. And I wanted to get more of an idea of the types of apps and clients that you're building things for, and that helps us as a team understand what we can add into BetterForms as a product to help support you more. Like, for example, Jason, this new app that you're building, would you have taken on that client if you didn't do any BetterForms development kind of thing, or what would you have done differently?
It's an enormous project, and the website is just part of it. But if I didn't have BetterForms, it would have been a real challenge I think it's a really important part of the original pitch was to provide self-serve client web services. Was that your question?
Yeah. I'm just curious, like, are there, I guess what would help us to understand is what tools or tooling would help you as a developer, a consulting developer, basically be able to get on better projects, take on better gigs.
Well, from my perspective, BetterForms allows me to take on better gigs, because I think that the kinds of things that I can deliver with BetterForms in the last few years have just become so essential that it's just hard for me to imagine doing business without it. And I mean, before this, I was either doing web direct stuff or just like I did PHP in the past, and it's far lower standard than the kinds of things I can do now.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I remember you showed me once a what's it called? A configurator. When you build a product configurator, or I think it's called, that's a term of the widget.
Like for my bag company?
Yeah. So you can layer the colors and everything. That was actually fairly complex.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I did that for my own business. I didn't do that for a client.
Right. And which I think we tend to be more invested when we're doing something for ourselves that way.
Yeah, I don't think I wouldn't have built a project like that for a client, because I'm not an expert in that. I had to learn as I went, and I spent an enormous amount of time.
So how many people bother to learn? We have three types of clientele demographics. We have consulting developers who are like yourself, who build stuff for other people mostly. We have in-house developers or people who are building stuff like João for his own business. And then we have people who have verticals like Mark, who's in this call. And they have an app for them for their own purpose. For the consulting group, do you bother to do a lot of self-education? Because it does cost. When you're doing it for yourself, it's different. But for a client, it can be quite expensive to learn a new technology stack. Like, Dave, do you find that you bother, like, do you shy away from getting projects that have a lot of discovery work in the sense of, I got to figure out this new technology, maybe it's some machine learning thing or something like that?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh no, like I dig right in and start picking up new shit. Let's just put it, the word no is not in my vocabulary, let's put it that way.
Right. How about yourself, Chris? Do you guys like, I guess what I'm trying to understand is where do you draw the line? Like, where do you say, yeah, we'll take that on, or that's not in our wheelhouse?
We're much more like David. We don't turn people away. We take it as an opportunity for us to grow and learn ourselves, or if we can't do it ourselves. And when we're doing that, we're not charging our client. Like that's part of our education and part of adding to our tool belt, I guess. And so we love those situations because it's a reason for us to grow. And now when the next client comes, we're ready for it. But if it's outside, too far outside, we're either contacting Steve Winter or contacting yourself and seeing how we can figure it out.
Right. And then I guess for the people who are more like in-house developers, you're developing some kind of app for your own product. Like, I'm not sure if he's still on here. João, is he still here?
Yeah, he's here.
Might have dropped off.
Yes, I am, Charles.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So I hear a voice, but I don't know. Anyway. Do you like, where do you draw the line with how much you're going to take on to how much you're going to split the, I guess it's how busy you are in your business, right? If you're real busy managing everything else.
Yeah, it's most managed like that. If I have time, I dig into something, and the opportunity of finding the FM BetterForms exactly on the point that I needed to implement this new way of manage our catalog online was really the right time, because even on my work, we had some free time. So mostly I dig into things when I have time. And in fact, FM BetterForms allowed me to do. I don't know if for me it's complex, because we are talking about 20,000 items, 3,000 cards. So for me, it was a challenge to build something in FileMaker, because I know FileMaker, learn by myself, but I don't see it allowing me with the technology like WebDirect to publish that to my customers. So FM BetterForm was the only solution, and in fact it was really fast. The only thing it was not easy for me. It was the UX part, because I don't know how to code in HTML or whatever technology it is. For me, imagine I have an app for my factories in China that is building WebDirect, and in WebDirect I can build anything. But in fact, in HTML, it was a challenge. Thankfully, you have a good team like Andrew that helped me a lot during this last month. And in fact, I'm quite happy with the situation and the ability that we have at this moment to completely update the system right away with a simple push of a button. So I'm really hoping that even FM BetterForms come up with an editor, an HTML editor, that it's easier for the people that are not HTML developers. So let's hope.
Yeah, we are working on that. And that's a challenge for us. I'm not the editor itself, but to have something that's really easy, but you can dig in as deep as you want. Like BetterForms, for the most part, is not really too limited in what you can do. You know, the original architecture, the goal was to keep it really, really flexible. And in fact, the original version was not as nearly as flexible, and now we're trying to move in that direction even more. It had a lot more opinion, and that was actually a technical mistake that I made years ago, is trying to get to the goal quick. I had a lot of opinion and a lot of modules and things like that, and now we want to remove those and instead just give you the tools that you can build your own things. Like Andrew built a side tray, and 5 years ago we would have found some module that can do that, or we would have built it and had it hard coded into the app, and you would have said, oh, that's great, now I can just set some settings and put my stuff inside this side tray. But then somebody else will come along and they say, well, can you make the tray go from middle, medium to large to icon to nothing? And it's like, well, we never put that into the app, right? So where do you draw the line in that flexibility? And we drew the line. We draw the line at being able to have access to that raw code. But at the same time, one of the things we're working on now is the idea of components. We already have components in BetterForms, which is reusable chunks of code. And now, hopefully, somebody like yourself, you say, well, I don't have time to learn everything that Andrew just did, but you can take his chunk of code, and it's like, I'm really good at cutting and pasting, and I understand the concepts.
Yeah.
So I can just hack it up. And that's where I think will be a nice sweet spot that you can
because at this moment, I believe I already know how to show things from my FileMaker database to the users. Now the next step will be receive information from the users.
Right.
So, but for now we will stay in our catalog. Maybe in the future we will try to transform some parts that I had in WebDirect to FM BetterForms. Let's go slowly.
Another thing that we're working on now, we're trying to produce is once a week a new page to either a template or just not an example page, but an actual page that you can use in your app. And we started off with this one here, and this is going to be a new template, and it's getting there. It's not finished yet, and it'll have dummy data in it, and you'll have to connect it up as well. But out of the box, you can sort of have something that has some opinion already. We'll try to incorporate our best practices into the app. We'll make it responsive and so on. I think we have some other pages here as well. So the same type of idea. A lot of little things here. That this is just a very rough draft here. There's a lot of colors that are off and whatnot. But Pearson's working with one of the team, Hassan, and basically we're trying to pump out an average of one page per week moving forward. And I think that's quite doable, and it'll give you some more tools, if you will, to structure things on. What would you like to see as far as examples? I know it's always the example of whatever you're working on, but is there anything that's kind of generic?
At this moment, I cannot recall, but what you just shown, it could help me build something right away. So connecting the template that you showed will be allow me to. I have one idea of something that is maybe a little bit far-fetched. Like, imagine I have a problem, and maybe this is a good exercise. I have a problem because I have a lot of parcels that came from China to Portugal. So they have tracking codes, and normally my customer is always asking me, "Oh, João, where it is the goods? It will arrive on time or whatever." So my idea was maybe to build something connecting with the UPS API. Mm-hmm. So instead of giving my customer the tracking code, I will give them a UUID that is related to his order, that then FM BetterForms on my app will connect with the UPS API, collect the information, where is the parcel? The parcel is in India or whatever, and it will arrive tomorrow to Portugal. And then I will be able to show that to the customer. So there are a lot of things that I have ideas. So this is nothing particular related to any layout or something, but it's functionality that I believe it will be able to, that I will be able to do it with FM BetterForms. So.
Right. Okay. Super. I think we can make enough pages that are kind of generic. Like I've seen a ton of apps, literally hundreds of apps that have helped. And we got reasonably good idea of what a page would be. Like this, you can use this page and change here and change there. And I think as we start to build those out and we have a bit more of a gallery, I think that will help a lot as well. To get you to basically being up and running faster, but still have full power.
Right.
Somebody had asked earlier on if we could use if you could add a pen, like an Apple Pencil on a tablet, and absolutely you can do things like that with third-party libraries. It's not something that we've built into BetterForms as any type of a canvas drawing tool, but there's so many of them out there that are on the market that you can use that it's relatively easy. It's probably maybe a 10-minute job to wire one up into BetterForms itself. I think, Andrew, maybe we should have our draw now before we lose too many people, because we're kind of getting towards the end of things.
Yep, you can click on the link that I sent you.
Okay, super. Let me jump to that. Awesome, thank you. Last week, our swag giveaway was, we're trying to have a draw each week, and for some different items. And last week was Dan Rosenstein who won. And let's see, we've entered basically everybody's names in here.
No, it's the one I sent you in Slack. I think that's
okay. So this is last week's.
Yeah,
so yeah, you guys. Okay, hold on for a sec. Let me grab that. Okay, so I'll just let that run for a few seconds and just check if your name is in there, because if it's not and you're in the call, then you're gonna miss out, just in case. All right. So if basically the rules are, if you're here right now, you win, and when we spin it, and if you're not here, well, we spin it again. All right, so let's give it a go. I don't know if it's spinning. Is it working? Click to spin. Oh, sorry. I clicked on some bunch of ad garbage here. Sorry. Can I? Okay, click to spin. There we go.
Oh, it's spinning.
There we are. Lawrence. Is Lawrence here?
Yeah, I'm here. That's wild.
Let me see, where are you? All right, super. Lawrence, are you on our Slack? By any
No.
chance? No. Okay. If you could direct message Madalena with your information, we should have your email anyway, but just she'll need to grab some information from you.
All right, cool. Thanks.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Where are you located?
Just south of Portland, Oregon.
Right. All right.
And my use, the reason I'm on the call is for internal corporate use that would be eventually offered to others within our industry.
Right. So you're looking at like some type of vertical type of an idea, or
Eventually, but for us right now, the primary is just for us. It's a real niche industry. Right. We have EPA compliance and things like that we need to do.
Who would be your users?
They would be other contractors that are involved in abatement, testing and abatement.
Awesome. Dave, are you working on anything interesting these days? Any startups?
Yeah, I got, you asked about what you guys could do, right? And it's funny, I got another huge job that's crazy, but it's like I only have so much time, right? So some of the things that would make it faster would be things like reporting, exporting the data sets out, that some of these guys need, like I think I went through this, but I just don't have the time right now to finish it. Was like just taking a table that, that you have on the screen and, just having a button be able to suck that set of data out, right? Easily, right?
Right. Okay.
Stuff that you can do in FileMaker, like, with a click of a button.
Sure. And it would be, would that normally be the data that's in FileMaker, or would it be the data that's in the actual front end at that point in time?
Just whatever they're viewing in the screen.
Right. So you would basically take like a data model of a key, say contacts, model.contacts, and just be able to dump that out in what type of format?
Excel, tab, doesn't matter. Like just a sample file, right?
Right.
So stuff like that. And then the vertical stuff, I have like 2 additional projects in like 2 different verticals that I just picked up. Again, it's just a time thing, right? So I have to sort of queue them up and just jump from project to project. So before, like Jason said, you can't do this stuff in FileMaker. Like, you know what I mean? Like if I didn't have this product, it would be like crazy. And I think your sales thing, if you were able to get guys up and running quicker, I think you would get more licenses in some of these verticals, because I got to turn these into vertical licenses at some point, right? That are in SaaS platforms and stuff. So, your next Friday one, I have one that I'm just about to launch that technically, once we get it going next year, I can flip it over into like a SaaS platform license for you, right? And it's in the legal space. Those are the things that are on sort of my list in terms of what you guys could add to the platform.
Charles, if I can hop in, I would second David's thing of something that you could build in that would be very helpful, is the ability to export a table, and not just necessarily a model, but what they're, like David said, what they're viewing. So if you have various filters that they are able to modify that model on the web, be able to just export that out. So if, let's say you have different statuses for a contracts table, and they filter for 2 of those statuses, to be able to export those out would be very, very valuable. We built it, and it was painful because you go back to FileMaker, you basically capture all the filters, go back to FileMaker, perform a find, and then export it out. But yeah, it would be really nice to.
Yeah, it's something definitely we could add in as an example. It shouldn't be too hard, especially if we just point it at a key and say, okay, here's the thing that exports it as Excel or whatever. Where it does get tricky, and is when you start to add opinion, like are there header rows, and are you going to color cells and things like that? Really complex thing. But if you're
just to the level that, like, what FileMaker does, like David said, when you hit export to Excel, like they don't change the header rows, you don't have any styling. It is what it is.
The raw data, yeah. I think we can do that fairly easy. We've done that a few times with just a library, and you point the library on the front end. The library sits in the front end, and you point it at the data, and it plops. What does it do? It opens up. You can option. I think it opens up a new tab, or it downloads some data. There's also some other plugins. Neil has done a thing with a different data table that already has that built into it as well.
So our problem always was it would take the whole model, not what they were filtering.
Right.
In order to get what they were filtering, we were having to send it back to FileMaker.
Gotcha. Yeah, you can actually capture the found set. Like if I search for CHA in a table, I can grab that found set now. We actually added that in there for you.
Okay.
A few years ago, yeah. Steve requested it, so we built it in. We built it in there. It's but it is a little bit cumbersome. It's not. You have to see an example of doing it. We do have an example. It's capturing the found set in a table.
Yeah, I have Neil's piece, right? But it's fairly lengthy to set up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things shouldn't be, in my opinion, things shouldn't be painful, right? You want things that are non-painful. Like, I'm going to stop the recording here, and I'll show you something that was painful and how we changed it. So thanks everybody for coming to Friday Live. Next month, we're having the best of 2022, and it'll be a bit of a show and tell. So we'll see you there.